Let's talk a little bit more about this. We're joined now live from Abu Dhabi by former Deputy Commander of U.S. Central Command, retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward, now a Fellow at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Thank you indeed for joining us here on BBC News. Quite spicy interactions on the Hill today between the Secretary and the lawmakers there. It was the first time that we got an official cost of the war in Iran, with the finance chief of the Pentagon saying it had cost around $25 billion. Given where we're at with that now, has that been value for money, do you think?
Without a doubt. Look, they've decimated their enrichment capabilities, and that's part of the program. The material is unaccounted for now, but the cascades, their ability to refine the product to weapons-grade material has been obliterated. So when he mentions removing their nuclear capability, that's a big part of it. So we have not got our hands on the material. They're refusing to hand that over. But their ability to do anything and develop into a weapons-grade material has been taken out. So that will take it years to reconstitute. But that is on their agenda. And of course, they're unwilling to talk to that. They still believe they're in a position of power. And as long as they hold the straits at risk, they can hold that material. So they're willing to let free commerce flow as long as they can keep their material. And that's completely unacceptable, not only to the U.S., to our allies and everyone else in the region and beyond, who knows how damaging that can be. So I think that objective has been met. You can close the door on that permanently by handing over the material or agreeing to inspectors. So those are the two components that are tied and on the table right now. But I'm always struck by the fact that people tend to gloss over the regime itself. And that's the longer, long-term threat. Okay, so they hand over the materials, but they then own the straits. They'll rebuild missiles and drones to jeopardize that. So at the end of the day, the end state has to be a regime change, one that acknowledges or defuncts and disavows the Iranian Revolution, and those policies and processes went through that. And I think now the U.S. is in position to do that.
Just to jump in there, Rear Admiral, sorry, on that point, just jump in on that. We haven't heard anything from the administration in recent times about regime change. A brief mention at the beginning of this incursion or exercise, as the president calls it. But now it's moved from that conversation about nuclear materials into a battle over control of the Strait of Hormuz, and no mention of regime change.
Well, don't forget, the president started this thing with unconditional surrender. That was one of his first policy statements. And again, there's a strategy to achieve that. Now, the world, Europe, our allies, wants that oil to flow. It's been punishing for Asia, punishing for Europe, and painful for the U.S. So number one objective, get the oil flowing. But we can't do that with acknowledgement of ending the nuclear program. If you achieve those two objectives, then you can have a longer-term campaign plan, be it asymmetrically, to go after regime change, because then those threats are off the table and they present more of a tactical threat than a strategic threat. So it's strategy at that point.
But isn't that the stalemate where we're at now with the talks, in that Iran is not prepared to do that, and it's discovered that it has this very useful strategic tool in the Strait of Hormuz, which was not an issue before the US and Israel launched those strikes on Iran?
So now ramp it up. You know, we've shut down their waterways. Have we shut down their airspace? You saw the president or foreign minister being able to get on a plane and go to Pakistan, go to Russia. Do we then shut down their airspace and disavow anyone from flying? Do we shut down their borders? Do we go after additional targets? While we've decimated most of the military targets, do we start going after individuals, IRGC at scale? So there's still a lot of tools the president has not used, and I think those are always on the table. And at the end of the day, I think that's what brings this group, the regime, to the table. The more pressure, the more pain we can cause them, the more they'll ultimately have to capitulate.
All right. Retired Rear Admiral Robert Harward, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News.
Thank you.